Donald Trump is currently suffering a prolonged public meltdown because for the first time in a long time, Republican lawmakers are publicly and kind of casually defying him on a major issue. And we have to talk about this. But before we do, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, as you know, for the most part, the Republican Party has devolved, regressed into an authoritarian cult of personality, the biggest and most dangerous, certainly political cult in American history, comprised of tens of millions of people. And unfortunately, for the most part, Republican lawmakers who operate in a coordinate branch of government, who don't directly work for Trump, he's not literally their boss, treat him like a boss and roll over and fold to every ridiculous whim. But for the first time in a long time, we are seeing some public and fairly casual pushback. And Trump is pissed. He's triggered. Don't be weak and stupid. Trump prods Republicans again to terminate the filibuster to save USA from deranged Dems. So let's take a look at this. Donald Trump has once again called on his fellow Republicans to terminate the filibuster amid the government shutdown, saying the GOP cannot afford to be weak and stupid because the survival of the United States is at stake. Trump prodded his party members in a Truth Social post on Saturday evening. Trump said that Democrats will find a way to eliminate the filibuster when he leaves office and warp the country to their liking if Republicans don't beat them to the punch. So let's take a look at this Truth Social post in its entirety. Remember, we covered his initial post about the filibuster a day or two ago. This is him getting increasingly unhinged and triggered because a number of Republican lawmakers are like, nah, sorry, Don, no. So this is Trump. Remember, Republicans, regardless of the Schumer shutdown, the Democrats will terminate the filibuster the first chance they get. They will pack the court, pick up 2 states, and add at least 8 electoral votes. Their 2 objectors are gone. Don't be weak and stupid. Fight, fight, fight. Win, win, win. We will immediately end the extortionist shutdown, get all of our agenda passed, and make life so good for Americans that these deranged Democrat politicians will never again have the chance to destroy America. Republicans, you will rue the day that you didn't terminate the filibuster. Be tough, be smart, and win. This is much bigger than the shutdown. This is the survival of our country. It is interesting, I will note, clock this, is very important, that Trump wants them to eliminate the filibuster so that he can forever keep the Democratic Party out of power. That's what he's signaling here. When he says we're going to make it so good the Democrats will never be in a position to destroy America, he means in his warped partisan MAGA brain, if you break the filibuster, we can pass laws which effectively make it impossible for Democrats to win elections. We can further Orbanize the United States. Remember, because Trump wants to do to the United States what Viktor Orban has successfully done in Hungary. He's made it an illiberal democracy. They still have elections, but so does Russia. And for all intents and purposes, those elections are irrelevant because the minority party, the opposition party, is locked into a permanent minority for all intents and purposes. Trump wants to do that to the United States. And the Democratic Party, I'll point out, I'll remind everybody, as much as people beat up on the Democratic Party, as much as I complain about the Democratic Party, Democrats do win elections. We win as often as we lose. We win as often as Republicans do. Remember, we beat Trump in 2018 with the sweeping midterms that Republicans have not had. Republicans have not had nearly as successful midterms as the Democrats had in 2018 under Trump. We beat Trump in 2020, kicked his ass. We flipped 2 red Republican Trump-supporting Senate seats in Georgia. Flipped them, both of them, in the control of Democrats now. We did fairly well, all things considered, in the 2022 midterms. Remember, everyone was expecting there's going to be a red wave, and there wasn't. It was more like a pinkish trickle, right? We actually expanded our Senate majority in the 2022 midterms. We won a bunch of off-year elections. We beat Trump's, hand-picked candidate, the Elon Musk-backed candidate in the 2023 Wisconsin Supreme Court race, extremely important. So again, I want to be clear. Democrats are capable of winning elections, and Trump knows that. That's why he's trying to gerrymander his way into a majority ahead of 2026 because he knows all else being equal, and we'll talk about this in a separate video, he's going to get his ass kicked again in the 2026 midterm. So again, just be clear, Democrats have their faults, but we can and have won elections, and we can and have beaten Trump before. He's trying to rig the game in his favor. And that's why he's saying, change the filibuster, let us do that, okay? I will point out, too, as far as packing the court, I think Democrats should absolutely expand the court. I've said this before, and I'll say this again, that if Democrats don't deal with the Supreme Court, we are truly screwed because remember, the Supreme Court has the ability to strike down any federal law as unconstitutional, in theory, right? So let's say in 2028, you get a Democratic president, you get a Democratic Senate, and you get a Democratic House. None of that guaranteed. And let's say, as President Biden did, you managed to successfully pass a law, any law about anything. Just imagine, okay? Whatever your pet issue is, whatever is the issue most important to you. Let's say it gets through the House, gets through the Senate, and the president, Democratic president, signs it into law. Well, Republicans could challenge it. It could be reviewed by a 6-3 conservative supermajority and then get struck down. And there's not a damn thing we can do about that. The only thing that you can do that is non-justiciable, non-reviewable by the Supreme Court is a constitutional amendment. And that's never going to happen because you would need 2/3 of both the House and the Senate and three quarters of the states. We are never going to get a constitutional amendment. So the only way to deal with this, if you are a liberal, if you're a progressive, if you're just a left-leaning moderate, if you are a sane person who recognizes this Republican Party has become incredibly dangerous and you want to get the hell away from their policies, you're going to have to expand the court because this court will never allow a Democratic agenda, a sane agenda, to survive. Okay? So when he says pack the court, again, to revisit it, no, we would be expanding the court. And again, as I've said before, the court has been expanded and shrank throughout the court's history. President John Adams, on his way out the door, shrank the Supreme Court. He shrank it in order to deny President Thomas Jefferson Supreme Court appointees. When Jefferson's party won the midterms and gave Jefferson an allied Congress, they expanded the court. These are founding fathers expanding and shrinking the size of the court for political reasons. So there's a history of this. It's not set in stone. It's not written, on divine tablets that the Supreme Court can only be 9. No, it's expanded and shrank time and time again. President Lincoln changed the size of the court. So yes, Democrats should expand the court. They should take it from 9 to 13. We have 13 circuits in this country, and historically speaking, there's been one justice for every circuit. We have 13 circuits. Make it 13. Make them liberal. Make them good, and make it. It would at that point it would be what 6-7. It would be a 7 to 6 slight liberal majority. That would be a much more balanced court than a 6-3 conservative supermajority, right? So yes, we should. I think we absolutely need to pack the court. Pick up 2 states. Hell yes. Don't threaten me with a good time. D.C., Puerto Rico, they do need to be states. Taxation without representation. We oppose that. So again, that's really what this is about. They are worried that Democrats will do what Trump wants to do. Like, we got to beat them to the punch. Man, I don't know if Democrats have that in them. It's true that Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema aren't part of the United States Senate anymore, but it's entirely possible that more centrist or moderate senators would oppose abolishing the filibuster or making an exception to the filibuster. It's not guaranteed that Democrats will be able to do what Trump fears that they will. I hope he's right, but he is. We've been reluctant to do it in the past. Anyway, he's freaking out about this. So let's take a look, okay? Axios has a good breakdown of this. Why Trump's push to kill the filibuster could haunt Republicans. Because right now, folks, again, he is facing some stiff resistance. Let's take a look here. Let's see here. This is from the Wall Street Journal. Trump pushed Republicans to end the filibuster in his first term. He was rebuffed by then Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. Some Republicans have said increasing hardships for the Americans hit by the shutdown could force action. Senator Josh Hawley said that he would consider changes to the filibuster to end the impasse. So, MAGA populist Josh Hawley, citing the impending lapse in food stamps and more than 40 million American people and was uncertainty around pay for troops. Quote, I can't just sit back and say, okay, well, I'm fine with that. I'm not fine with that. Okay, so that's Hawley supporting it. Tommy Tuberville, who's a moron, the coach, said a shutdown has gone on too long. Quote, if Democrats don't stop playing games, it's time to blow up the filibuster. So he supports Trump ending the filibuster. Still, more than 4 Republican senators, enough to block unilateral changes to the filibuster if all Democrats voted no, said Friday and in interviews with the Journal over the past month that they don't support ending the filibuster to end the shutdown. Senator John Curtis says that he supports maintaining the filibuster. Senator Tom Tillis, my senator, Republican, who's on his way out the door, he also doesn't believe that the Republicans will ultimately vote to abolish the filibuster. Quote, the filibuster is not going away this Congress, not even if Trump called for it. Quote, I'm not changing the filibuster, said Lisa Murkowski. Quote, absolutely not, said James Lankford. Quote, it's a non-starter, said Representative John Cornyn. Quote, we're not going to destroy the Senate in order to give the Democrats what they want, okay? Because that's exactly what they want, to destroy the filibuster. That's why Trump is pissed, because one Republican after another are like, man, we're not going to do it. Not because they have a principled devotion to the filibuster, but because they are afraid that doing so would ultimately advantage the Democrats the next time Democrats are in power. But Trump is triggered because these Republicans are publicly defying him. They are speaking out against him. They are saying, how dare, no, we're not, whatever pressure you put on us, Donald, we are not going to give in. So that's what's pissing him off, and that's what's causing him to become increasingly unhinged about ending the filibuster. Don't be weak, don't be stupid, right? For the first time in a long time, even this MAGA cult is telling him no, and he can't handle that. So now having established that, let's get back to the Axios article. Trump's second term has broken presidential norms at a breakneck pace, but his demand that Republicans initiate the nuclear option of ending the filibuster on Thursday is a Pandora's box senators would rather keep closed. Overhauling Senate precedent in such a powerful way is great when you're the party in power, but it could make life miserable for Republicans if Democrats retake control. Ending the filibuster would allow a simple majority of senators, the vice president in the case of a tie, to pass bills instead of the 60 votes most legislation currently requires. Quote, because of the fact that this is a quote from Trump we already read. Intrigue. Trump has been clamoring to end the filibuster since his first term, but Republicans, including then Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, held back. Trump also urged Republicans to end the filibuster earlier this week, leading Senator John Kennedy to ask J.D. Vance to talk Trump down. Okay, how could the filibuster end? The rule isn't mandated by law, so there's a couple of ways senators could drop the filibuster. The more official way would be to change Senate Rule 22, which is the text that dictates the 60-vote number to move a bill forward. However, absent a two-thirds majority, that overhaul is unlikely. The easier way is to invoke the so-called nuclear option, which would leverage the ability of a simple majority of senators to establish a new interpretation of Senate rules without having to make a formal rule change. Republicans can skirt the filibuster altogether by passing some budget-related bills through the reconciliation process. The Senate parliamentarian would then advise the GOP if the reconciliation bill aligns with the chamber's Byrd rule. If it doesn't, senators typically try to align. But Republicans have already played a game with that earlier this year to pass the One Big Beautiful Bill. They went around it to avoid the filibuster because Democrats were going to filibuster the One Big Beautiful Bill. So they played procedural games, and we'll talk about that in just a second, to sidestep it to allow a simple majority to pass the One Big Beautiful Bill. Again, I want to be very clear about this. Anyone who tells you that the Republicans have a principled devotion to this whole you need 60 votes to pass a bill, full of shit. They're either a liar or a moron. They don't know what they're talking about. Republicans are only committed to the filibuster in as much as they find it useful, period. As Axios notes, Vance, as Senate president, doesn't need to listen to the parliamentarian's advice. Unless the Senate overrules him, Vance could ignore the parliamentarian and jam through bills through using the reconciliation process. In other words, reconciliation allows 51 votes, right? So let's say the parliamentarian says, hey, this thing that you want to do, it doesn't really actually fit for reconciliation. You can't do it. J.D. Vance could give that guy the finger, and if enough Republicans go with it, they can just cram it through regardless. So again, let's be very clear about this. They're not principled on this. Senate Republicans will most likely hold the line on the filibuster. They can see a future where Democrats in power could push through a wish list of items, such as granting D.C. statehood or ending voting rights legislation. Yes, and again, the National Review and the Wall Street Journal and every conservative outlet imaginable has been panicking about this. I will point out that, again, this term, we have seen shenanigans by the Senate Republicans. As a matter of fact, let me just, instead of going through the text and being here for another, 3 hours, if you even go to the Wikipedia page, 2025 instances called nuclear. Senate Democrats accused Republican majority under Majority Leader John Thune of exercising the nuclear options 3 times in 2025 to allow consideration of a joint resolution of disapproval under Congressional Review Act, to allow the use of a current policy budget baseline for the scoring of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which again, the parliamentarian, I believe, voted against, to allow the consideration in executive session of a resolution allowing the majority leader to move to proceed the en bloc consideration of multiple nominations. Again, for multiple Trump nominations, they changed the threshold to allow a simple majority to get it through. So again, I want to be clear. The Republicans have no principled commitment to the filibuster. They are afraid of what Democrats might do, and that fear of what Democrats might do in the future is currently prompting them to defy Trump. And Trump is becoming increasingly unhinged, pissed off that Republicans would dare defy him, causing him to go off on these sorts of rants. So it is a fascinating dynamic, and we will definitely be tracking it. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.